It started with my phone number getting posted somewhere. Calls all night. Not spam, not robocalls. Real rings back to back like somebody sitting there refreshing and dialing again just to keep me awake. Unknown numbers. Blocked. Weird area codes. If I silenced it, they'd switch to FaceTime and blast my screen with that bright flash. I answered once, half asleep and pissed, and all I got was breathing and a little snicker. Then a click. After that, I stopped answering anything I didn't recognize, but the ringing still carved holes in my sleep. Next day, it wasn't just calls. I got a pizza to my address. I opened the door, and the delivery guy looked at me like I was trying to screw him. I told him I didn't order it. He argued anyway, planted in my hallway, loud enough for my neighbors to peek out. I shut the door on his face and heard him mutter something nasty. 2 minutes later, my phone lit up with a text. Rude. Like they were right there enjoying it. 10 minutes later, another pizza showed up from a different place. Then wings. Then soda. Then my buzzer kept going off like I was hosting a party. I stopped answering it, but that just meant the hall filled with confused delivery people saying my unit number out loud. Ringing again, knocking again, making sure the whole floor learned exactly where I lived. The building started looking at me different. Not sympathy, suspicion, like I was the one causing problems. So I started stripping my life down. I deleted old accounts. I tightened privacy settings until my phone felt like a lockbox. I called my carrier and changed my number. 2 days later, the calls started again. New number, same flood. I hadn't even given the new number to my mom yet. I got a text that just said, "Nice try," and my hand went numb around the phone. That's when the fear got teeth, because it meant somebody didn't just stumble onto my info. Somebody could find me on purpose, and they wanted me to know it. The messages weren't random either. They knew details I never posted. My elevator floor, the color of my mailbox, the fact my front door sticks unless you lift it. That last one made my stomach roll. I didn't tell anyone that. That's just the little annoyance I deal with when my hands are full. I got a text that said, "Lift then turn," and I stood there in my kitchen with my key in my fist, staring at my own lock like it belonged to somebody else. I stopped taking the elevator. I took the stairs and listened for footsteps behind me. I changed routes, left at different times, came home with my head down, keys between my fingers. It didn't matter. The messages kept landing like they were watching me do the little routine. 4th floor again. You left at 7:42. Blue mailbox. They didn't need to threaten. They were already inside my day. Then the wellness check happened while I was at work. My super called, voice shaky, saying cops were pounding my door. I called the number he gave me and got an officer who sounded bored. He read off the report like it was fact, that I said I was going to hurt myself, that I had a weapon, that I wasn't responding to family. Total bullshit. I told him I was at my desk, alive, and he just said they still had to check. Like I was a task on a clipboard. I left work early and drove home, shaking so hard I kept gripping the wheel like it would fly away. 2 cops were in my hallway with my super. My neighbors had their doors cracked like it was a show. One lady leaned out with her phone angled like she was trying to catch my face. I snapped at her to get back inside. She did, slow, offended, like I'd ruined her entertainment. The cops asked to come in to verify. I let them because saying no felt like inviting them to break my door. They walked through my place like I was the suspect. They asked if I lived alone, if I had meds, if I'd been stressed lately. One of them glanced at my kitchen knives like he was judging my options. I showed them my call logs and the texts. They gave me that look people give when they think you're online too much. They left with a warning about internet safety and nothing else. After they went, my super told me, real casual, that I should stop antagonizing whoever it is. I told him to get the fuck away from my door. After that, I started keeping notes like a lunatic. Times, numbers, screenshots, case numbers, names. It was the only way to stay sane. Every elevator ding made me tense. Every quiet stretch in the hallway felt like someone holding their breath outside my door. I stopped sleeping in full stretches. I'd jerk awake, check the lock, check the peephole, check my phone, then do it again an hour later. The calls slowed down, Not because it stopped, but because they realized slow was crueler. One ring, then silence. Then another ring the second I started drifting. Sometimes they'd text right after, awake or good girl. I'd throw the phone across the couch and still keep staring at it, waiting for the next hit. One afternoon I came home and found my doormat flipped over. Not shifted, flipped, like a deliberate middle finger. Under it sat a tiny wrapped package, brown paper, neat tape placed dead center. I didn't touch it. I backed up, scanned the hallway, listened. Nothing. I went back down, drove to a store, bought nitrile gloves and zip bags. Came back with my heart hammering like I was about to pick up a grenade. Gloves on, phone recording. I carried it inside with 2 fingers and set it on my counter. Inside, a spare key blank and a note written in neat block letters. We're close. The handwriting was calm. That's what made it worse. The key blank was shiny, the kind you'd get cut in 5 minutes at the kiosk downstairs. I pictured somebody practicing in my hallway, listening for the click, ready to stop and act normal if a neighbor walked past. I didn't touch anything barehanded. I put gloves on, bagged it, called the cops, and waited in the lobby where cameras see faces. I sat under the lens on purpose in the brightest spot because upstairs felt like a trap. My super hovered and kept trying to make it smaller. He said, maybe it's a prank, and I told him to stop saying that word like it made it cute. He got huffy and said I was overreacting. I asked him if he wanted to trade doors with me. That shut him up. The cops showed up with that tired look like I called them for noise. I showed them the key blank, the note, the text, the call logs, the wellness check. One of them held the bag up and turned it like it was a joke. I asked if he'd be smiling if it was his door. He stopped. They took it, wrote a report, and told me to consider changing locks. I asked them to pull building footage. They said they could request it later. Later than what? They didn't answer. That night, I sat in my apartment with all the lights on, shoes still on, because I couldn't stand the idea of being caught off guard. Around midnight, my peephole went dark. Not a finger. Something pressed flat, tight like a coin. The light from the hallway vanished in one clean blink. I froze. Then I heard the soft scratch at the door. Metal on metal, careful, controlled, like someone working my lock without wanting attention. No rattling, no fumbling, just patience. My phone buzzed. Open up, bitch. Don't be boring. I didn't open. I stepped back, grabbed the heavy end table, and shoved it against the door like that would fix anything. Then anger surged, and I slammed my whole weight into the door. Whatever was covering the peephole popped loose and clattered onto the hall carpet. I heard a sharp breath on the other side. Then footsteps ran down the hallway, fast and pissed, like they were mad they didn't get to finish. I yanked my phone up and called 911 with my mouth dry and my hand shaking. By the time anyone showed, the hall was empty. I cracked the door and pointed at the floor. A tiny disc sat there, magnet-backed with a pinhole lens. Apipo le camera. Something meant to block my view and record me from inches away. I stood there staring at that stupid little circle, realizing how close someone had been to my face, how comfortable they were pressing something against my door like they owned it. One cop picked it up with a pen like it was gross and finally admitted it was a camera. I asked if this was enough now. He told me to calm down. I told him to do his fucking job. He asked if I had enemies, like I'd started some war. I said I didn't know, and that's what made it terrifying. He suggested I stay somewhere else. I asked if they could post a car outside. He laughed. They took the disc and left, like the whole thing ended when they walked away from it. Next morning, management told me it was probably kids. I told them to shut the fuck up and check the cameras before I checked out of the lease and into a lawsuit. The sublet looked perfect until the second night when I heard scraping inside the hall closet. Not pipes, not settling. A steady drag like something heavy moved across wood. I was in my socks, sweaty from work, dumping my keys in that stupid little bowl by the door, trying to stop thinking. The scrape came again, slow and controlled, like someone pulling a chair across a floor. I stood there with my phone in my hand like an idiot, waiting for it to turn into a bang or a cough so I could label it normal. It didn't. It just kept dragging. I yanked it open and found a false panel at the back, screwed and clean. I unscrewed it because anger beats caution when you're tired. The screws turned too easy, already stripped a little, like they'd been moved a lot and no one wanted you to notice. No dust, no whips, just clean wood and fresh edges. Behind it sat a narrow space packed with plastic bins. Each bin had a label. Not winter clothes. Names. Dates. Little notes like left window unlocked and walks dog at 6:40. My brain did that thing where it tries to be polite even when you're staring at crime. Maybe it's some dumb watch thing. Then I saw the notes had details you don't get from casual living. Alarm blinks red for 30 seconds. Back gate sticks, kick low. Leave for gym at 5:55, earbuds in, doesn't look up. My skin went tight, like my body realized first and my mind lagged behind. I pulled the bin out and popped the lid. Inside were bundles of hair ties, cheap earrings, a single glove, and a stack of printed photos taken through windows. Not artistic, not spying for fun. Close shots of people inside their homes, unaware, soft, and exposed. The photos were regular printer paper, curled at the edges, and the angles were wrong in a way that made my stomach flip. Up close, too close, like whoever took them had their face almost touching glass. A woman bent into a fridge. A guy asleep on a couch, mouth open. A couple shots at night. Curtains open, the kind of private mess people only show when they think they're alone. Some had a faint reflection of a hand holding a phone, like a little signature he didn't even notice he left. I found one photo that was my living room. Not me in it, just my lamp, my half-open suitcase, my crooked blinds. Taken from outside. I knew my shit. I dropped it like it burned. I slammed the panel back and locked my bedroom door, hands shaking so hard my keys clinked like teeth. I shoved my dresser a few inches toward the door like that would stop anything. I sat on the bed with my phone and tried to breathe quiet, listening for footsteps, for the scrape again, for anything. I met the roommate once when I picked up the key. He did that polite thing where he smiled without warmth, like he was already tired of you. He'd asked where I worked, what time I got home, if I had anyone visiting. I answered because I was carrying boxes and I didn't want friction. Now those questions landed different in my head, like he'd been building a file before I even unpacked. I texted my best friend. I found photos in the closet, and she called right away. I could barely talk. She said, "Call the cops." I said I would. Then I froze, because a part of me still wanted this to be a misunderstanding and not a monster living 5 feet from me. Keys hit the front lock, and the door opened. I didn't move. I watched the thin line of light under my door like it was a heartbeat. My roommate came home and went straight to that closet like his body ran a routine. He didn't turn on the living room light. He didn't pause to drop his bag. He froze when he saw the screws disturbed. He didn't ask what happened. He just stared at me, face flat, then stepped toward my room like he wanted the door between us gone. The knob turned once. Stopped. I held my breath, so hard my throat hurt. He didn't yell. He just stood there, close enough that I could hear him swallow, like he was deciding what version of himself to use. Then his steps shifted away fast. That's when I moved. I grabbed my keys, yanked the door open, and ran. The hallway was dark. The closet sat half open. I hated it. I hit the front door, and he slid into view from the kitchen, too quick, like he'd been waiting for me to make noise. His hand came up like he meant to grab my wrist. Then he stopped himself and smiled like I was being dramatic, already starting that "you misunderstood" line. When I didn't slow down, his smile dropped, and his voice got sharp, like I'd broken a rule. I shoulder-checked past him and hit the stairwell barefoot. Cold concrete. Echo. My heart slammed, so loud I felt stupid. I took the stairs 2 at a time and kept glancing up behind me. I grabbed my phone, bolted outside, and called the cops in the stairwell. I kept my voice low because I didn't want him to hear the operator and get brave. I gave the address, said I was subletting, said I found someone's stash of personal items and surveillance photos, and the roommate was following me. While I waited, he came into the stairwell. He stopped one landing above me, hands on the rail, blocking my path up without even trying. He said it was a misunderstanding. He said I was going to ruin everything. Then he said, real quiet, "Don't fuck up my life." Like I was the problem in his story. He followed me down one flight, slow, telling me I'd misunderstood while his eyes stayed hard and angry. He didn't touch me, but he walked close enough that if I tripped, he'd be on me. He kept trying to get me to step back into the apartment to talk, like talking would erase paper photos and label bins. When he realized I was already on the line, his jaw tightened and he backed off half a step like he hated the witness. The cops took long enough that every second felt like a decision. I started recording on my phone with my other hand. I said the time out loud. I said his name. My voice sounded small, but it stayed steady. I wasn't trying to be brave. I was trying to leave a trail. Then the building's front door opened again, heavier this time, and I heard voices that weren't his. 2 officers came up the stairs. The relief hit me so hard my knees went loose. My roommate switched faces the second he saw them. Hands out, smile on. That fake friendly guy you trust with your mail. He acted confused, like I'd dragged cops into roommate drama. They went inside. They asked if they could look. He tried to laugh it off and said something about me being paranoid. I pointed at the closet and told them about the false panel. One officer unscrewed it slow, gloved up. The space smelled like warm plastic and cheap detergent, like he cleaned it to keep it safe. A screw rolled under the closet baseboard when the officer pulled the panel, and it made this tiny ticking sound that felt louder than the sirens outside. The bin sat stacked back there like a pantry, too organized to be accidental. He tried to flip it on me the second the panel came off. Said I'd broken into his space. Said I was stealing. He pointed at my hands like fingerprints were confession. One officer told him to step back. He didn't. He kept edging forward, still smiling, still acting reasonable, until the officer's voice hardened and he finally stopped. That little crack in the mask scared me more than the bins did, because it showed how fast he could switch. He tried to crack another joke. Nobody laughed. When officers searched, he tried to joke it off. They opened the bins anyway. The jokes died. The handcuffs clicked on. He kept looking at me like I'd stolen something from him. They pulled out more than I'd even seen. A small notebook with routines and addresses like Tuesday 7:10, parking lot, blue hatchback, and Friday, late shower, window open. A ring of keys labeled by color. Flash drives with dates. Printouts with circles around windows. The officer read one note, stopped, and looked at the other officer without saying anything. That's silent. This is bad. Look. My roommate kept trying to talk his way out of it, right up until the cuffs were on. He kept saying it was research, and everyone does this, and you don't understand. And he kept looking straight at me between sentences like I owed him silence for the cheap rent. When they walked him out, he leaned his head back just enough to keep me in view, eyes flat, memorizing me. After they took him out, the apartment felt wrong. The closet door hung open, and I couldn't stop staring at it. One officer told me to pack essentials and not stay here tonight. He said it gently, but it still landed heavy. I called my friend back and told her to come get me. I grabbed my laptop, wallet, charger, whatever I could shove into a bag in 2 minutes. I left clothes. I left dishes. I left my shampoo in the shower. My brain kept expecting him to come back, like the cops were a pause button, not an ending. I kept checking the peephole like a ritual. I moved out that night. I left half my stuff. I didn't care. I just wanted a door he didn't have a key to. The flyer for the missing woman showed up on my windshield, and I felt that stupid urge to help. I signed up for a weekend search. I wore boots, brought water, tried to be useful. They staged it in a church lot at the edge of town with floodlights and folding tables and a whiteboard that kept getting wiped and rewritten because nobody actually knew anything. People lined up to sign waivers like we were registering for a 5K. They handed out paper maps that immediately got damp from sweaty hands. A woman in a reflective vest tried to sound confident while her phone rang nonstop, and she kept saying, "Stay in pairs, stay on marked routes, call in, don't be a hero." Somebody argued anyway. A guy in camo wanted to bring a dog off leash, and the vest lady snapped, and then apologized, and then snapped again. A teen tried to film for TikTok, and an older volunteer cursed at him until he put his phone away. It was chaotic, intense, and weirdly ordinary, like community theater for a nightmare. That's why it took me too long to clock the one person who moved like he was running the show. A guy with a clipboard assigned people to pairs. He kept me away from groups, kept sliding me toward the edge routes. He didn't look scary. That's what pissed me off later. He looked like a dad at a charity run. He had a lanyard and a laminated card that flashed when he walked, the kind of cheap plastic that makes people obey. He pointed and people went. He joked with a couple women, clapped an older man on the shoulder, acted like everyone was a friend he'd already met. When I drifted toward the central group, he stepped in front of me, not touching, just blocking with his body and the clipboard. He said my name, which he'd only seen on my sign-in sheet, like that meant we had rapport. He asked if I drove alone. He asked if anyone came with me. He asked if my phone was charged. It all sounded like safety questions, but he asked them in a row like he was building a file. I said I was meeting friends later, which was a lie, and he didn't even blink. I tried to attach myself to a trio of women pulling on gloves and talking about the creek. He cut in and told them their zone was full and redirected them before they could object. Then he turned back to me and said he needed coverage on an outer service road. Easy terrain, just check brush and culverts in and out. I said the rule was pairs. He smiled like I was adorable for remembering the rule and said, for the service road, one person is fine. You stay inside of the road the whole time. You'll be safer than the people busting through thickets. I said no, I want a partner. His smile thinned. He tapped his clipboard and said he had limited volunteers and gaps to fill, and he couldn't spare two for a straight road. I looked past him for the actual coordinator and tried to raise a hand, but the vest lady was in a loud argument with the camo guy, and a different volunteer kept interrupting her with questions about radios. The clipboard guy took my elbow like he was guiding me politely, and that touch, that casual possession, lit my whole nervous system up. I pulled my arm free and said I can walk back and pick a different zone, and he said, sure, if you won't waste time, but every minute counts. That line hit the part of me that hates being selfish. I hate that it worked. He started walking, and I followed because everybody else was busy, and I didn't want to be the person who caused a scene in a missing woman's search. We passed the last little clusters of people, and the noise dropped off behind us. He kept a pace that forced me to match him. If I slowed, he slowed. If I sped up, he sped up. The road went from gravel to packed dirt and dipped into trees. My phone bars fell from 2 to 1 to nothing. I pulled it out anyway, thumb hovering like the screen could fix reality. No service. The woods got quiet in that way that makes your spine tighten, where you realize even the birds shut up. He didn't say a single thing about the missing woman. No name, no photo, no clothing, no last seen point. He asked where I lived, what I did for work, if I lived alone, if I had roommates, if my car was nearby. I gave soft answers. Around here, office stuff, not alone. He watched my face while I answered like he was checking for tells. Then he slowed and angled us off the center of the road toward a stretch where the brush grew thick and the ditch was muddy. He stopped and stared at my hands like he was deciding what kind of fight I'd be. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. He picked you. My stomach went cold. Not scared cold. Empty cold. Like my organs dropped an inch. I looked up and he was already close, already smiling like I'd agreed to something. I stepped back. He stepped forward. I shifted left. He shifted left. He didn't rush, just kept closing the space with patience, like he had all day. I tried to reply to the text, and it wouldn't send. I tried to call, and it failed instantly. No service. Of course. I raised my phone anyway, like just holding it up might change his math. He stared at it like it insulted him. I told him I was going back. He made this little soothing motion with his hands, palms out, and his mouth did that fake concern thing people do right before they get angry. He slid himself between me and the way we came. Not dramatic, just efficient. I could feel my heart hitting my ribs like it wanted out. I kept thinking about all the dumb, Normal reasons a man could be walking a volunteer down a road, and none of them fit his eyes. My brain tried to do math. Maybe the text was a prank. Maybe the guy was an overzealous volunteer. Maybe I was being dramatic. Then he looked past me down the road like he was checking if anyone was coming, and his face went flat for half a second, like the mask slipped. I said I didn't feel safe out here alone, and I wanted to head back to the lot. He gave me that tight smile again and said something about not being paranoid, about how people get lost when they panic. I took 2 steps back toward the way we came. He matched me and then sped up, cutting me off so close our shoulders almost touched. I tried to squeeze past on the ditch side, and my boots sank into mud, and he used that moment to reach for my phone. Not a grab, more like a casual snatch, like he had the right. I yanked it back, and he caught my wrist instead. His fingers clamped down hard enough to hurt. He leaned in, and I saw little red veins in his eyes and that calm, practiced patience just sitting there. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Don't let him take it. I couldn't breathe right. I twisted my wrist, and he tightened, like he wanted to test how far he could go before I screamed. I opened my mouth, and he smiled wider, like he was daring me. I didn't argue. I threw my water bottle at his face and ran uphill. It hit with a wet smack, and he flinched hard enough to give me a half second. I used it. My boots skidded in the mud, and I caught myself on a sapling and tore skin off my palm. I didn't stop to look. He lunged, caught my backpack strap, and yanked hard enough to spin me. The strap bit into my shoulder, and my body whiplashed sideways like I'd been hooked. He didn't say a word. No threats, no shouting, just force. I slipped one arm out of the strap, left the bag, kept moving. I heard my backpack hit the ground and slide, and I heard him grunt like I'd stolen something. For a split second, I pictured my wallet and keys in there and felt this stupid urge to go back, like property mattered. Then I felt the air shift behind me, and that urge died. He chased fast for the first time. Not screaming, not threatening, just sprinting like a guy who knew exactly how much distance he could eat before hands closed on skin. The silence was the worst part. If he yelled, it would have been performance. The silence meant he didn't need to perform. I cut right toward a rise because I needed elevation, needed sight lines, needed anything that wasn't a tunnel of trees. Branches slapped my face, and one caught my ear hard enough to sting. I kept running. I started yelling before I had words, just noise, because noise is what you do when logic fails. I heard his shoes behind me, steady and close. I felt him get close enough that I could smell him for a second, clean laundry, and something sharp like aftershave. His fingers brushed the back of my jacket, barely a touch, and my whole body spasmed forward like I'd been shocked. I tripped on a root, caught myself with both hands, and came up with dirt under my nails. I didn't care. I kept moving. I aimed for where I thought the main trail was, chasing the faintest hint of distant voices like it was a lighthouse. My throat tore itself raw from screaming, and I kept doing it anyway, because every second he had to pretend was a second I might get to live. Flagging tape appeared on a branch, then another. Then the ground flattened out, and the trees thinned just enough that I saw orange vests through the gaps. I hit the main trail and screamed until my throat burned. Other volunteers turned. He stopped instantly and switched to confused helper mode, hands out, fake concern dripping off him. I kept backing away and filmed his face. He glared at my phone like it was a weapon, then peeled off into the trees. No apology, no explanation, just a man losing his patience because witnesses showed up.